These stories are first-hand accounts shared by Reddit users, detailing unsettling real-life encounters that left lasting impressions. Each narrative provides a chilling glimpse into moments of danger, survival, and eerie coincidences that might make you rethink your surroundings. Disclaimer: these accounts were originally published by Reddit users and are presented as personal experiences. While they are described as true events, their accuracy relies on the original storytellers. The details shared here are intended for awareness and cautionary purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised. Story 1. My Uncle Matt never existed. My family and I have been going through a very strange experience over the last couple of months. It's hard to even put into words or explain what is going on. I guess I can just start off from where it all started to feel off. A few months back, my family had a big get-together. My parents both have 2 siblings. They all got married and had some kids. Well, all of them except Uncle Matt. He never got married or had kids. That means I have 10 cousins. My aunts and uncles all live within 2 hours of us, so we've all grown up together. That being said, we don't normally have all my aunts and uncles in a house at once. This was a rare occasion to have a family meal when they were all free. I will not be naming every single family member in this post because that seems like a lot of information, and honestly, you've already gotten more information about my family than you ever wanted, but I promise this context is important. Okay, enough with my babbling. Let's talk about what happened that weird night. My parents and I went over to my Aunt Margot and Uncle Ken's house for a barbecue in the backyard. The backyard felt loud and chaotic. I tried to stay out of the way and get the night over with. I was honestly just there for the free food. We were all sitting down at a big table outside. I was so focused on making sure none of the napkins went flying in the wind I wasn't listening to the conversation. My Aunt Margot came over to the table with a plate of really burnt hot dogs. My mom immediately started to laugh at the sight of them. Is burning food genetic or something? How on earth do you guys always do that to food? The Jensens need to leave the cooking to the Millers. My mom said with a sarcastic giggle. Uncle Ken looked at her confused. What are you on about, Liz? Uncle Ken snapped back. I mean, Margot burnt the hot dogs and Matt always burns food when he cooks. Remember, we had to ban him for months from cooking because we had to order takeout like 3 times in a row. Everyone at the table laughed, recalling their memories. Sighs of recollection bounced back and forth from person to person when my dad spoke up in Aunt Margot's defense. Honey, what are you talking about? Matt is your brother. I really shouldn't have to remind you of that. My mom rolled her eyes in response to my dad. I spoke up because I was suddenly confused about which side of the family Uncle Matt was actually on. You would think I would naturally just know that, but all my aunts and uncles act like siblings and call each other their siblings. My grandparents often refer to their sons/daughter-in-laws as just their kids, so it isn't something I always think about. Wait, I'm confused. Whose side is Uncle Matt on? What is the joke? I don't get it. I asked, but was only met with a laugh from all the parents at the table. I finally got an answer from my mom following the silence of the joke that somehow went over my head. Don't be a silly baby, Matt is your dad's brother. As the words left her mouth, half the table looked confused. Liz, what are you talking about? He is on your side. He is a Miller. My Aunt Margot said as she scraped off the burnt edges of her hot dog. Okay, now I'm with Amanda. I don't get the joke. My mom said while looking at me with narrow, inquisitive eyes and then at the rest of the group. Wait, everyone slow down. Aunt June said, speaking up for probably the first time in the night. This is dumb. Matt is not Liz and I's brother. He has to be on the Jensens' side of the family. I sat at the table watching my family in silence. Their eyes darted back and forth. They stopped laughing and were all just scratching their heads. After a few minutes, my mom got out her phone. She found an old family photo from when she was a kid. In the photo were her, my grandparents, my Uncle Paul, and my Aunt June. Nothing out of the ordinary. After looking at the picture, Aunt Margot got out her phone and looked for an old childhood photo. Ah, found one. She stated as she showed off the photo on her phone. Yet again, the photo was normal. It had my grandparents, my dad, Aunt Margot, and Aunt Susan. The next hour consisted of both sides of the family going back and forth showing photos. None of them with Uncle Matt in them. I had a few of my cousins there, but they all lost interest once they ate. I, on the other hand, couldn't be pulled away. I was engrossed in learning where the heck Uncle Matt came from. They kept talking back and forth. They figured maybe he wasn't anyone's sibling. Maybe he was related by marriage or a second cousin twice removed that I just called Uncle Matt, because that was the easiest thing to call him. We all have a relative like that, right? I know an easy solution you might be thinking of is to just call him up. That's also what I said, but he was working and they didn't want to interrupt him. But guess what? I needed answers, so I decided to call him. However, when I looked at my phone, I couldn't find him in my contacts. I looked through it multiple times. I remembered texting him about something a few days back, so he should have been in my text history. Still nothing. After being weirded out by his contact being gone, I mentioned out loud that someone should call him, regardless of him being at work. No one agreed with me, but once I told them his contact was missing from my phone, they all got curious and looked to see if he was missing them too. We were all in shock to find him missing from all our phones. The family started to dig through their camera rolls and any digital libraries they had to try and find any photo of him. Uncle Andrew thought he had a photo of the back of him, but we soon found that we all remembered him looking differently. Uncle Andrew showed a picture of the back of a bald man who looked pretty tall. Aunt June called him crazy and recalled him having long curly red hair. It wasn't like we hadn't seen him in a year or that he was some kind of distant memory. I saw the guy last week. He came over to my house to help me with some homework, and I can tell you he didn't have red hair or no hair at all. He was, well, shoot. I can't remember what he looked like now that I think about it. It was safe to say we were all creeped out. As the sun went down and it got chilly out, the group moved inside. Normally, this is when everyone would go home, but I saw Aunt Margot start a pot of coffee. It was going to be a long night. The air was tense and full of unease. None of the adults wanted to go home until they had answers. I could tell the adults wanted to talk more but didn't want to worry the younger cousins. My older cousin Maddie clearly didn't care about anything that was going on. She just wanted to sleep. We convinced her to take my 3 young cousins into the basement so they could all get some sleep. But not me, I was invested. Uncle Matt and I are close. We see each other all the time. How could I not have a shred of evidence that he even existed? As my cousins shuffled downstairs, all the adults huddled around a big whiteboard Aunt Margot slapped on the kitchen island. They started to write down everything they could remember. What he looked like the last time they saw him, memories of him. None of it was coherent. It seemed he was a completely different person in all our memories. Even if it was a memory where multiple people were around. One of the only things that we could all agree on was that the Jensens always thought he was on the Miller side of the family and the Millers always thought he was on the Jensen side. My mom recalled a story of Matt and my dad going to a lake to fish, but the hook got stuck on Matt's hat and went flying. My dad told us he remembered my mom telling him the same exact story many times. Everyone had memories of stories where he was on the other side of the family. Soon everyone was on the phone with a new family member trying to tell them the situation and asking what they thought about everything. My aunts and uncles were talking to realities on the phone I didn't know I had. Relatives that probably only met Matt a couple times at best. All I heard was one dead end at a time. No one knew where he came from or where he went. So the big question was, who is Matt? Was he just some random guy who weaseled his way into the family? Telling one side of the family one thing and the other side another? Or was it something so much worse? As the sun came up that Saturday morning, we were all still scratching our heads. The deeper we got into who Matt was, the more freaked out everyone got. I was honestly surprised they let me stay with them all night long. The more digging everyone did, the farther away we felt. The more rabbit holes we went down, the less real he seemed. We couldn't find any evidence that he ever existed. Some of us searched all over the internet for Matt Jensen or Matt Miller, and a few of us searched for other last names in the family. Of course, it was kind of hard to know who we were looking for given we didn't know what he really looked like. After hours of discussion, we compiled a list of attributes that never wavered about Uncle Matt. He was a man, he never had a mustache, he was tall, he was bad at math, and he loved Jim Carrey movies. That might seem like a random grouping of facts, but that's because it was. We couldn't even remember where his house was. Some of us completely forgot and others remembered different houses. It didn't matter. We weren't going to start knocking on doors to find a man we were concerned never existed. We started to believe that as soon as we began to question who he was, he just simply started to fade away into nothingness. Like it was some kind of self-destructive on his own consciousness. It was around 9 a.m. that morning when people started to fall asleep on couches. The night before started with everyone being determined and saying the night wouldn't end until we found Uncle Matt, but here we all were. Exhausted and with little to no answers. It felt like accepting defeat by napping on the couch, but we couldn't do much else. At 11 a.m. we all woke up to the sound of my cousins playing in the next room over. We all sat up and rubbed our eyes. You could practically see the gears turning in everyone's heads as they woke up from their stupors. I could tell when they realized their memories actually happened and it wasn't just a weird fever dream. My Aunt Margot stumbled to the kitchen while yawning and started to dig in the pantry for something substantial the kids could all eat. It was clear they had alright raided the cookie stash. As the adults had a quiet conversation, we heard something come from my cousin Cass that made us freeze. "Yeah, remember last night when Uncle Matt gave us all those cookies? It was so much fun," my small cousin said with a hop and a skip. "Wait, Cass, get over here and say that again." My Uncle Andrew yelled in an attempt to sound intimidating but came out with a voice crack. Cass walked over to us looking like a confused puppy who just got yelled at. "What did I do wrong, Uncle Andrew? I thought if Uncle Matt offered us cookies I could have them." "Cass, you are not in trouble. This is very important. Are you telling me Uncle Matt was with you guys last night?" Uncle Andrew tried to say in a gentle tone to not scare Cass. "I mean, not the whole night, but he brought us all cookies and put a movie on for us. Then he said he wanted to go hang out with you guys upstairs." Cass told us with a quiet voice. Everyone started to frantically look around the room, looking for any evidence of him being there last night. We quickly asked the rest of the cousins if they saw Matt, and some kids did and some didn't. I noticed something when I started to count the objects in the room. There were 10 adults and me upstairs last night. So, there should have been 11 people in total, but I saw 12 plates out with the leftover crumbs from our late-night pizza, 12 spots laid out for sleeping in the living room, and 12 mugs or cups of coffee. He was here last night. As I mentioned what I found, my dad said he remembered seeing him last night. He said Matt brought him some water. Uncle Paul said he saw him go to the bathroom but couldn't remember him coming out. They mentioned how it felt like it never actually happened, but he managed to place the memory in them after the fact. How else would they see Uncle Matt right in front of them and not realize what was happening? I had a strange feeling that started to bubble up. I felt uneasy and restless. "Wait, something is off here," I said loudly to the room. "Everyone lines up on the wall, I want to try something." For a second they all looked at me confused. They normally wouldn't let me boss them around like that, but they were desperate and tired. All the adults lined up against the wall. As I walked by then I counted out loud. Something strange happened. I counted 12 people including me. None of the kids were lined up. I wasn't counting myself twice. There was an extra person. Uncle Matt wasn't just here last night. He was with us in the room at that moment. Other members of the family even tried to count. We did it over and over again. Even adding one of the kids to the mix, but every single time there was one extra person, but we still couldn't see him? How was he hiding in plain sight? Everyone ended up leaving my Aunt Margot's house that afternoon. We were all still extremely creeped out about the whole thing, but what could we do about it? Not much. It's not like Uncle Matt ever did anything violent. Mostly normal behavior except for a few memories of him that were kinda weird. One of us remembered seeing him in the kitchen, stacking and unstacking bowls for hours. Another person remembered him once packing for a vacation, but his suitcase only had trash bags in it. And I have a memory of us sitting in front of a fireplace with him reading the instruction manual to a blender for a bedtime story. At least those were the kind of memories we had in the beginning. As the weeks went on, we started to remember things that got more and more concerning. He showed up in our houses in the middle of the night. Or buying us all hammers for Christmas. He once bought hundreds of dollars worth of knives and put them in my dad's car. Once we developed disturbing memories of him, we tried to tell the police. Of course, they couldn't find any evidence of his existence, so they couldn't help us. It didn't help our case that we couldn't even give them a last name. How on earth are they supposed to find a guy based on his name being Matt and no physical features? So who is Uncle Matt? I can say with 100% certainty, I have no clue. Is he a man? Is he an entity? Is he a figment of our imaginations? Or is he nothing at all? I don't know. And that's the worst part of all. He seems to always be around at family dinners. Most of the time I count the number of people I end up with an extra person. He feels like a virus, always implanting a memory of himself being around, but at the moment I never see him. It seems to be a family joke at this point, always leaving out an extra plate for him or something. In my opinion, no one is taking this situation seriously. I know he hasn't hurt anyone, but why should we wait for something to happen? I swear I can feel it when he shows up. The hairs on the back of my neck stand up. My family has given up on trying to figure out who or what Uncle Matt is. But I haven't. It feels like they have all just forgotten the disturbing memories of him. I swear the deeper I dig to find him, the worse the memories get. Like he is rotting and festering in my memories. Right before my eyes. I'm starting to think it's his attempt to stop me from looking for him. The fact that he is punishing me for looking for him makes my concern grow more and more. Why is he suddenly running now that I am on to him? Why is he so afraid of me finding him? And what will happen once I do find him? I will find you, Uncle Matt. I will find out what you are. Story 2. A stranger approached my car at night with a warning. Check the back seat. I like to think that I take my personal safety very seriously. I don't stand too close to the road while waiting for the walk signal. I have my location shared with my sister and mom. I keep my wits about me when I'm out in public, and I try not to dawdle after getting into my car. If I had only been more diligent about that last rule, I might not be in the situation I'm in now. Early this morning, just after midnight, I was sitting in my parked car outside of my favorite grocery store. I was exhausted from picking up a friend's evening shift, and so I stopped to grab dinner on my way home from work. The store is in an isolated part of town, but I had never felt unsafe in the area. Then again, I'd never been so late at night. The second I exited the store with my purchase, the old cashier closed up shop for the night and turned off all the lights in the building. For some reason, I did something I never do. I started eating in my car. As a precaution, I try not to linger in isolated parking lots, especially as a young woman who often has to run errands after dark. Maybe it was the hunger, or maybe the fact that, due to a recent breakup, my house hasn't felt all that welcoming in the past few weeks. In any case, I was in no rush to return home. I pulled up an episode of The Terror on my phone and settled in to eat. I enjoyed a few minutes of blissful peace and quiet before a shout pierced through the night. I looked up from my phone and was surprised to find a woman standing in front of my car, waving her arms at me. My car was parked right in front of the store, facing towards the building, and there was only a thin sidewalk separating my vehicle from the store's exterior. I hadn't seen her coming at all. It was like she had emerged from the brick wall before me. She rounded my car, coming to a stop beside the driver's side window. She then started pointing at the ground, the universal signal for roll your window down. Fat chance, I thought. Though she looked sane and kempt, I had no clue what her intentions were. In fact, I felt pretty vindicated in always locking my car doors immediately after entering. The woman, perhaps seeing I was making no move to exit my vehicle, then told me something no one wants to hear. "Hey!" she shouted. "There's someone in your back seat." My mouth went dry. Time seemed to slow as 1,000 horror movie scenes raced through my head. I could almost feel the piano wire digging into my neck, the barrel pressing into my temple. I undid my seatbelt and prepared to launch myself out of the car. Now that the intruder knew I was aware of their presence, would I even have enough time to run? With one hand on the door handle, I stole a glance into the rearview mirror and saw no one. My car is a compact hatchback, meaning there is very little room for a person to hide in my cabin. Even in my exhausted state, I would have noticed someone upon looking into the mirror. My terror fading to confusion, I turned around in my seat, surveying the cabin with my own eyes, and confirmed that there was no one in my back seat. When I turned back around, the woman had taken another step closer to my car. Her body was barely a foot from my door and her fingers were wrapped around the handle. There were a few more deep clicks as she tried, unsuccessfully, to open the locked door. I raised my gaze, and she gave me an odd smile, as though she and I were sharing a private joke. For the first time, using the faint glow of the street lamp, I took a closer look at the woman's face. Her skin was stretched tightly across her skull, making her thin mouth and nostrils appear as though they'd been cut onto her. Her eyes were deep-set and ovate, and her teeth seemed both too small and too numerous. I allowed myself a brief moment to gawk at the face before me, and then I threw my car into reverse and hightailed it out of the lot. For a few disheartening seconds, the woman held onto the door, keeping in step with my vehicle as I backed up. Luckily, she soon let go, and I drove away, my mind racing with the realization that the woman was trying to bait me out of my car. Even more disturbing was the fact that it had almost worked. I wondered if she had others with her that I simply hadn't seen, and what she had wanted from me. I hoped I had narrowly escaped a robbery as opposed to something much more sinister. I got back to my house 20 minutes later. Still shaken from my encounter, I rushed inside the house and made sure that all of my doors and windows were locked. My exhaustion did little to soothe my nerves. My mind played tricks on me as I got ready for bed, conjuring up flashes of the woman's face in the dark corners of my house. Once I finally fell asleep, my fears followed me from the waking world. I had a long, vivid nightmare, most of which I've either forgotten or is irrelevant to this account. All I know is that when I jolted awake some hours later, it was to the sound of a frantic banging on my front door. I sat up in bed, unsure if I was still dreaming or not. My alarm clock read 4:17. It was far too early for someone to be knocking on my door unless there was some kind of emergency, which, given the forcefulness of the knocks, there may have been. Slowly, I rose from my bed and inched towards the entryway. I had never before been in such a situation, and was at somewhat of a loss as to how to react. I didn't smell a fire, thankfully, but that didn't mean all was well. Suddenly, I heard a man's voice calling out my name in a questioning tone. It sounded vaguely familiar, but I couldn't immediately place it. "Who is it?" I called back. "Brian," answered the disembodied voice, and relief washed over me. My neighbor, Brian, lived in the house across the street. We weren't close exactly, but I often saw him walking down the block with his dog, Bailey. I turned on the entryway light, but as I was still in my sleepwear, I didn't want to open the door unless I had to. Instead, I called back to him. "What's the matter?" "Well," he began. I heard his voice crack, and he cleared his throat. "Do you have someone over right now?" "What?" I asked, my heart skipping a beat. "No, I don't." "Why do you ask?" "Well, the dog had to go out, and while I was in the yard with him, I thought I saw someone in your front window. Someone who didn't look quite right." I stilled, feeling as though I were in some terrible dream. Turning around and glancing down the dark hallway, I wished I had turned on more lights on my way to answer the door. "She followed you home," I thought. "She's in your house with you right now." I was ready to bolt out the door into the cold, but by some miracle, I had just enough presence of mind left to consider my neighbor's words more carefully. Something was wrong. I stepped away from the door. "Are you all right, Brian?" He cleared his throat again, and when he next spoke, his voice sounded slightly different from before, as though he were testing out a new timbre. "Of course, I just got a bit of a cold here, but I still wanted to check in on you." My voice wavered as I voiced a question to my neighbor. "But your dog, isn't it a girl?" Brian didn't respond. My mind reeled in the torturous silence, trying to discern whether the threat was outside the door or inside the house with me. After a full minute of complete stillness, the handle to my front door began to move. It rotated downwards as far as it could before the lock stopped it, then shook as the person on the other side of my door pulled on the handle. This happened several more times as the person tested my lock, and then there was a powerful bang, as though someone had rammed into my door with all their might. After that, there was silence again. I stood frozen in place for another minute. I had no peephole, but I worked up the nerve to walk into the living room and peer through the blinds into my front yard. In the distance, walking down the street away from my house, was a figure. Although I couldn't see the face, something deep within me knew it was the same person who had tried to open my car door. I watched her walk away into the quiet night until she disappeared from my view. Needless to say, I didn't get much sleep for the rest of the night. I split my time between roaming the perimeter of my house, looking for anything suspicious, and sitting in my kitchen running the events of the night over in my mind. The most likely explanation was that I'd been dreaming. After all, I'd nearly been baited into opening my door to a potential criminal just hours before, so it made sense that I'd have a nightmare about a similar situation. Then again, I had never, in my entire life, had a dream so vivid. Maybe, somehow the woman really did follow me home. She easily could have stuck a tracker on my car, but how in the world did she know Brian's name, and how had she impersonated him so well? The sun is setting now. I haven't left the house all day. I've been too haunted by the idea of someone, or multiple someones, trying to draw me out into the open. No matter how many times I check the house, I still feel as though I catch glimpses of the woman in my periphery, of her beady eyes and uncanny smile. I suppose I should try to get some sleep now, impossible as that seems at this point. I just needed to jot this down before I went to bed in case anything happens to me, and B, you ever think about blindly trusting the warnings of a stranger? Story 3. I'm performing an autopsy on a pregnant woman, and things keep getting stranger. I knew her. In all my years of work, I've developed a strange relationship with death. I see it as something purely physical. The body in front of me is just an organism who's stopped living. That's all that it is. And yet, it took me by surprise to have her on my table. I'd seen her around the hospital before, excited, glowing, talking about what her life would look like from now on. She was a bit distracted sometimes, saying that great things were coming, but I didn't expect her to die right before giving birth. She was found drowned in her own home, with writings on her wrists and on the back of her neck, and she'd been laying in her bathtub for days before her neighbor found her. She had no husband, no relatives. They expected me to rule it as a suicide. I didn't believe that, since it made no sense. Why would she kill herself right before giving birth? Right before becoming a mother, a thing she'd been so excited about? I'd been called in the middle of the night to work on her. They said her body was already in a pretty fragile state, and I needed to be precise and fast before they could wrap this tragedy up. I won't weigh you down with all the gory details. I'll just go over the process really fast so that you'll get an idea of what I do. First came some of the paperwork and observations, along with the external examination and photographs. I didn't notice anything besides the obvious signs of drowning and damage done by the 3 days spent in the bathtub. Although, if I'm being honest, but that might have been just me, I thought that the skin surrounding the writing, wrists, neck, was lighter than the rest and harder. Next came the internal examination. I'd been plagued by a wave of sadness, not wanting to move on with the procedure, but I tensed up and kept on working. Again, the usual signs of drowning. I froze with the instruments in hand. I was the only one in the morgue, or at least the only one alive, and it might have been the lack of sleep or the general eerie atmosphere that was making me feel unsure of what I was seeing. There was no earthly way she could have made those carvings on her ribs. Tiny carvings of the same symbols. My throat was dry, which made me feel like I was choking on air, and suddenly the collar of my scrub felt too tight for me. It wasn't my imagination. Her ribs were covered in these carvings. Could it be some bone-eating bacteria? I knew it was pointless to even ask that question because I knew it wasn't. I took out my phone to take a close-up of the ribs. I know that wasn't too professional, but I had no choice. The moment I took the picture, something clattered in the distance. I looked up to the door to the hallway. No one should be here. I took a sharp breath and carefully put my gloves back on, feeling the blood slowly drain from my face as I worked my way down to her amniotic sac. I was expecting to see something that would make my skin crawl, and I knew that no matter how hard I braced myself, it would still hit me hard. When I opened it, it was empty. There were no signs of a fetus. It was as if it had just disappeared, leaving her placenta and the umbilical cord behind, intact. There was no baby there. I stepped back from her and took off my gloves. I rubbed my eyes. That had to be impossible. Her tummy had been perfectly round, and I'm pretty sure there would have been signs if she'd given birth before or after dying. It was inhumane. Unnatural. Everything indicating a pregnancy existed, all except for the baby. I carefully closed her up, trying not to think about the missing baby and the symbols, then filled the report. I wrote suicide on it. I wasn't 100% sure of that. I didn't need to be. They'd been clear with the instructions. Just get it done. I creaked the door open and peered into the hallway. The clattering had come from the supply room, and I hadn't heard the door open or close, so what had happened was still there. I approached it slowly, holding my breath, as if I were afraid to make a sound. I placed my hand on the doorknob and twisted it. It was locked. On the inside. I knocked. "Hey," I whispered, "is anyone there?" What followed was an unusual sound, something like someone sucking the air through their teeth. I looked back to the hallway, ending with the morgue. The door was swinging open. I couldn't remember if I'd closed it or not, and I didn't want to. I decided my job was finished there. I closed up and got into my car, then drove home in silence. I live alone, so me coming home at 3 a.m. would not disturb anyone. After doing my night routine and going to bed, I found myself twisting and turning, strange dreams pressing onto me, like the ones you have when you have a fever. I thought I heard a cry at one point, until I realized it had been my own. I opened my eyes after what seemed like minutes, to discover it was a little over 6 a.m. In the soft glow of the morning, my window had fogged up a bit, and I couldn't help but stare, perplexed, at the fresh print of a child's hand on the inside of the glass. Story 4. My housemate is dead, but everyone is pretending she's not. Has anyone ever been in a situation like this before? So anyway, it all started last week. I live with 4 roommates: Jess, Lily, Dane, and Miguel. Lily is the one who I'm pretty sure is dead, even though my housemates all say she's pretending. And at first I did think she was pretending. It's an old trick of hers. She's super introverted. And sometimes if she's overwhelmed or just doesn't want to talk, she'll pretend to be asleep. We call it her playing possum. But now, she's been playing possum for nearly a week. Her eyes are open, her face is this grayish-white and has been turning kind of purplish, her body is bloating, and I saw a fly land on her eyeball and I think it laid eggs there. She hasn't changed out of her panda onesie since she started playing possum last Monday. She smells. She smells like a corpse. Like rotting meat. And that panda onesie, that panda suit is so gross. I'm pretty sure she died in it last Monday and everyone is just in some kind of denial. But does that even make sense? I mean, how is it that 3 other people are all saying she's alive and that I'm delusional? Is it just some bizarre social experiment? I keep waiting for some reality TV host to pop out from behind the potted plant and a hidden audience to start laughing or clapping. I feel like I'm coming unglued from reality. I'm sitting on the sofa as I write this, by the way. Sitting here, looking across the TV room at Lily, who is propped up in the same chair she died in, eyes wide open, flesh bloated and lips purplish and skin just. I think she's going to start leaking into that chair. But let me rewind to last Sunday. Sunday is when we hit the old lady's cat. It wasn't on purpose. We'd all had a bit too much to drink and I was driving and Dane was in the passenger seat and Jess and Miguel and Lily were in the back, and the cat, it just freaking raced out into the road, solid black, and then there was a thump. My stomach flipped. And then this old woman came out of her house and saw her cat had been hit and screamed and screamed. Lily told her she should have kept her cat inside, not let it wander near a busy road. Anyway, long story short, I think that lady was a witch and hexed us for killing her cat. More specifically, I think she hexed Lily. I mean, I don't think so. I know. Because the woman said some words in a strange language and we all called her crazy and drove home. So that was Sunday night. Come Monday when I came out for breakfast, I was up early, as usual. The only other person out in her chair in the living room was Lily, bundled up in her panda onesie. I said good morning, but she had a 1,000-yard stare. I figured she just wanted to be left alone and didn't think anything more of it until I got home from work in the afternoon. Lily was still in the chair. Same exact pose. Still in her panda onesie. I asked if she was all right. Miguel was playing a video game and he answered for her, said Lily was sick and had stayed home from classes. I hope you feel better, I told Lily. She didn't respond. Lily, I said. She didn't respond. Hey Lily, I said that I hope. Chill, just leave her alone, snapped Miguel. who seemed annoyed because I was interrupting his game. I thought it was weird, but I let it go because he was acting so normal. But at dinner she was still in her chair in the same pose and hadn't moved. I tried talking to Jess, who told me, "She'll be fine, it's just a cold." This behavior went on for days. And just any time I tried to ask any of my roommates if Lily was okay, they would act like I was the crazy one. I tried to point out she hadn't changed out of her onesie and was told to quit being an asshole. She's sick. Let her be. At one point I was staring at her from the sofa, trying to catch her blinking, and Jess yelled at me and told me to stop being such a creep, that I was weirding Lily out. They even put up a big cushion in front of her to block her from having to see me, which she clearly couldn't because she was by this point 3 days dead. I assumed once the rotting set in that they would notice, but they just pretended all the harder. And in fact, they even started staging her body? Like, I know it sounds really weird. I don't know why they did it or if it's some sick social experiment or what. But they moved her. I found her at the table one morning. She was slumped backwards over her chair, sightless eyes staring up at the ceiling. Everyone talked to her like she was alive. By this point she also stank. I mean, to the point I even noticed Miguel and Dane kind of surreptitiously keeping their distance and breathing through their mouths, not their noses around her. I tried to talk about this to them later, but Miguel just wrinkled his nose at me and said, "Yeah, I know, it's gross. But she's super depressed." Jess says she's never seen Lily this bad before. She's mad and upset about that cat. Just let her be. We gotta let her work through this. She'll come out of it. Until then, things like showering and getting out of bed are really hard for her. I almost told him, yes, those things would be hard for a dead person to do. But I didn't. Honestly, I didn't know how to respond. I finally managed to say, "Dude, I think she's rotting in that panda suit." He chuckled and shook his head and said, "Come on, don't be an asshole." I finally did what I should have done from the beginning and called the police. I said I wanted a wellness check on Lily. My roommates tried to send them away, but I came downstairs and insisted and pointed to the corpse in the panda costume in the chair by the television. That chair was really gross by now. And the cops went over to examine her, and I really believed, really and truly, that we were all about to be arrested for having a dead girl rotting in our living room, congealing into that chair. But they pretended she was alive, the same as my roommates kept doing. She never spoke a word in answer to them. Never moved. Later Jess took me aside and told me my actions were uncalled for and that all I did was make things worse for Lily. So now I'm not sure what to do. Update: it's been several more days since I wrote the above stuff, and as you can imagine, her body became severely decomposed. Also, I confronted my roommates. We got into a huge fight. I told them that clearly the witch's hex had done something to Lily. That it was blinding them and we were all living with a dead girl. They looked shaken after I pointed out the smell. The way Lily wasn't eating, was literally rotting. They told me they thought I was seeing things. But the entire house reeked of death. None of us could stand it. We could all smell it. I heard Miguel and Dane whisper about the smell later, but they clamped up at a death glare from Jess. So I finally decided to take action. Last night, I bundled up the corpse in the panda suit and drove it out to the woods. There's these high bluffs out there. I tossed the corpse down the rocks. The animals out there will pick it to pieces, if it isn't already too rotted for them to eat. I came back home and also cleaned up around the house and put that disgusting chair out on the curb and finally went to bed. In the morning I woke up to find Jess having a panic attack. She demanded to know where Lily was. I told her Lily left and Jess accused me of lying. Miguel seemed relieved though. While Jess went out in her car to go searching for Lily, Miguel told me he could finally breathe again and that it really had smelled bad in here and someone needed to do something. He said he hoped Lily got the help she needed, but that this wasn't the right place for her and she probably needed inpatient treatment. I refrained from telling him that I thought it was way too late for a hospital. Anyway, her body being gone should be a good thing, except I think the hex is now hitting the rest of us. Because Dane, he's always a late sleeper. He didn't wake up through Jess's freak out or my conversation with Miguel. But now it's afternoon and I just came out and found him sitting next to Miguel on the sofa, playing video games. Only he's not actually playing. His eyes stare straight ahead of him. His hands don't move. There's a first-person shooter on the screen, and Miguel keeps telling Dane he needs to step up his game. But Dane is literally doing nothing. Seeing nothing. I think he's like Lily was last Monday. Like the hex hit him and now he's dead, but nobody can see it. I don't know if I should wait for his body to rot, or if I should just take him out to the bluffs sooner. If this plays out the same way, Miguel won't stop pretending Dane is just fine. Jess will come home and also believe that he's still alive. Even the police will believe it. Why am I the one the hex didn't hit? Why am I the only one who can see that they're dead? Story 5. Mary was born in a black and white room, and scientists didn't let her see colors until she turned 18. She saw something we didn't. Mary's room, also known as the knowledge argument, is a philosophical concept concerning a hypothetical woman named Mary who has never seen color. She has only ever existed in a black and white room. Mary studies the world through books and a monochromatic television screen. She reads about colors, but she does not experience them visually. Can the universe be fully understood in purely physical terms? The answer differs, depending on whether one believes that we know fundamental truths about reality a priori, without experience, or a posteriori, with experience. In other words, will Mary learn anything about color when she leaves the black and white room? It was a thought experiment. Nobody was supposed to actually do it. However, in 2007, a group of researchers sought to answer that question. And the experiment they conducted would have been condemned by boards of ethics across the globe, but these were not ethical scientists, and this was no ethical organization. I would have decried its actions back then. This wasn't why I joined the agency. But I was afraid. After all, they were willing to put an innocent baby in a colorless prison cell, doomed to grow up in near solitary confinement, save for a nurse dubbed nanny. What would they have done to a whistleblower? I don't know how they found the baby, and I don't want to know. Whether a parent willingly gave her up, or one of the scientists intentionally bred her for the experiment, the result remains the same. A baby, named Mary, in honor of the philosophical concept which inspired the horrifying experiment, was placed in a white, windowless, foam-padded cell. She was blindfolded whenever her nurse entered the room to provide food, formula, and fresh clothes, always the same black onesie, with coverings like mittens and socks to cover her hands and feet. She was also made to wear a facial covering akin to a balaclava, which covered her face. There was no mouth slit, to avoid her seeing the color of her lips, and she wore black contacts in her eyes. Equally, Nanny wore the exact same attire every time she entered the room. To put it simply, Mary's daily outfit was horrid, barely any more humane than a straitjacket and a bag over the head. There was no room for error. Mary was watched by at least one person at all hours of day and night. Should she get curious and try to sneak a peek at the color of her skin or eyes, she would receive 100 volts in the collar attached to her neck. But more terrifyingly than that was the simple fact that Mary was well-trained. So well-trained that she never, in her 18 years of imprisonment, even attempted to take a peek at her skin. She was such a willing prisoner, having never known anything else, that I think she would have stayed in her room even if the door had been standing ajar. This initially seemed excessive, given that copious measures had been taken to ensure no reflective surfaces would be allowed within the room. Even the television monitor was fitted with an anti-glare screen. However, scientists were paranoid that Mary might, somehow, catch a glimpse of her green eyes. Even seeing her pale, peach-colored skin would have dirted the results of the experiment. Black and white. Those were the only shades that Mary was permitted to see. And when Mary started walking and talking, Nanny stopped entering the room entirely. Fresh food and clothes were delivered through a horizontal slit in the steel door, and Mary was always instructed to wear a blindfold before changing or using the bathroom, which comprised of a white porcelain toilet and a black showerhead fixed to the foam wall. Revoltingly, both were exposed in that titchy room of hers. Her entire world was a box, stretching a mere 4 meters across all 3 dimensions. I wanted to save her numerous times over the years, wanted to leave that horrid place behind. But I'm a coward. Besides, we wouldn't have got far. There is no running from these people. And the agency isn't even the greatest horror of this story. On Mary's 18th birthday, Dr. Robson delivered a thrilling message over the speaker. "Happy birthday, Mary. he said in a monotone lacking empathy. Thank you, the girl meekly responded. Will there be chocolate cake this year? I wasn't fond of the lemon last year, you see. Today, we'll be celebrating in a different way, Mary, Robson replied. Do you know your age? I'm 18, she croaked. Does that mean? Yes, Mary, Dr. Robson said. Today, you leave the room. I'll see color? She asked rather innocently. Any sane and well-developed human in the outside world would have simply been glad to have freedom, but Mary had no concept of freedom. No concept of a prison. She had no understanding that this childhood had been abnormal, worse than abnormal. Inhuman. To keep Mary compliant, her schooling had been rigid, with books that purposefully omitted any dangerous ideas. The result of that? A girl relishing at the opportunity to not escape from her prison, but to simply see color. Yes, Mary. You will see color. Nanny is already on her way to fetch you, Dr. Robson said. We watched live footage, filmed on a closed-circuit camera, from our operational room. Nanny unlocked the weighty entrance to Mary's room, and we all waited with bated breath, waited as Nanny aided Mary in removing her black headgear. I heard Mary giggling giddily and unnervingly, as the bag was removed from her head and the contacts were removed from her eyes. And then, as her first experience with a color other than black or white, Nanny removed her own black outfit to reveal a striking red dress beneath. Mary gasped. It was an intake of breath so sharp that she seemed to stop breathing. Perhaps, for a moment, she had stopped breathing. What are you experiencing? Dr. Robson asked. Is it new? Does it feel like? I knew it, Mary whispered, with vocal cords that sounded as if they were on the verge of snapping. Then her giggling picked up again, seeming to unnerve Nanny. This is why you did the experiment, isn't it? Does this feel like a new experience, Mary? Robson asked with a hint of impatience, seemingly oblivious to Nanny's discomfort. It was plainly clear to me, even through grainy camera footage. Mary shot her teary face up to the camera. Yes, but I've been waiting for it. Yes, I know that, Mary, Robson groaned. But so have I. Tell me about it. Tell me about the red. How does it feel to experience true color for the first time? We're seeing some interesting brain activity on the screen here, but your words would really help us to. I'm not talking about the red, Mary interjected. And then she jabbed an accusatory finger at Nanny's dress in a way that frightened me, certainly frightened Nanny, who jumped backwards. I'm talking about that, she giggled. I knew there was something you were leaving out of the books and TV shows over the years. What are you saying, Mary? Robson asked. I don't understand. You're looking at red. Red and the second color, she insisted. The color you didn't describe in the books. None of the adjectives you've used describe this one. Red is just as stark, powerful, and passionate as described. The blue color of Nanny's eyes is as soothing and tender as described. But this other color on her dress is just. What other color? Robson cried. It's just red, Mary. Right here. Mary yelled as she lunged forwards and prodded Nanny in the abdomen. The woman in the red dress jumped backwards, clutching her stomach, and then Mary's eyes went wide. Oh, she whimpered. What, Mary? Robson asked. Please tell us what you're seeing. What I saw, she whispered, moving her finger up to Nanny's face. It moved up there and now it's gone. Please describe this other color to us, Mary, Robson said, before putting an image up on Mary's television set. Which one of those is it? Mary's eyes shot to the television screen and quickly scanned the 12 main colors on the screen. It's not one of those. Not a different shade of one of those. It's a different color. There are 10 million possible permutations of colors, Mary, Robson said. Perhaps you just... No, Dr. Robson, the girl interrupted, panting heavily as her eyes darted back to Nanny's face, studying it. I understand how shades work. The shade of blue on the screen differs from the color of Nanny's eyes. But that other color, it wasn't included on the screen. It was... Mary stopped and her eyes widened. Then she said, I'm sorry. Nanny frowned. That's okay, Mary. I know you didn't mean to. Not you, Mary hissed. before leaning forwards and trying to look into Nanny's mouth. I'm sorry I saw you. Mary, you're not making any sense, Dr. Robson said. I think we've done enough for today. We'll do more tomorrow, so. I wasn't supposed to see it, Mary moaned, shooting backwards, clunking into the foam wall, then seizing clumps of her straggly hair. Oh God, why don't you see it? It's in you. Nanny looked up at the camera. I'd like to step outside now, Dr. Robson. Dr. Robson sighed, then pinched the bridge of his nose between two fingers. Fine, Nanny. Nanny had already spun on her heel to leave. She would have done so regardless of whether Robson gave her permission, as Mary was clearly disturbing her. But she barely took one step before her body fixed itself to the floor. And then Nanny juddered like a fleshy bobblehead. I was overcome by a warm sensation across my skin, and moments later, there came a thunderous noise. Skin flew into the walls from a red eruption of dress fragments, blood, and guts. Nanny was nothing. Screams filled the operating room. Some fled, some fainted, and others simply froze. I don't even know whether any of them noticed Mary clawing out her eyes, leaving streaks of blood and tears across her cheeks as, mere minutes after seeing color for the first time, she ensured that she would never see anything else ever again. I'm sorry, the eyeless woman wailed. I didn't know I wasn't allowed. I'll never see you again. As I saw a trail of blood run from Nanny's destructed corpse towards the front door, clearly painted by something unseen, a deep dread filled my chest. I realized that my fleeing colleagues had the right idea, so I followed, fled in fear, leaving Dr. Robson and my frozen coworkers behind. I don't remember leaving the building, getting in my car and going home. But I must have done those things. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be posting this for all of you. It's been 4 hours. 4 hours since Mary saw color for the first time. Saw a color that none of us saw. What was it? Why could only Mary see it? Story 6. My son's in prison for something horrific he did at school, but still insists he did the right thing. The visitation room is cold. It's a stark, blank space, where a glass wall separates us from the inmates and the only physical connection between a mother and her son happens through a gray telephone. I sit on a hard plastic chair and wait for Adam to come in. I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel. Since he did what he did 2 weeks ago, it's like my life has been put on pause and my body's been stuck in a state of numbness. I haven't seen him yet. I watch him enter through the door, head down, the prison uniform clearly hanging off his 145-pound frame. A tall, intimidating officer escorts him to the seat and stands guard behind him. Through the glass, I stare at him, but he doesn't look up right away. He's ashamed, a mother knows. We both pick up the phones. Hi, son, I begin, keeping my voice neutral. How are they treating you here? It's okay, Mom, he replies. I probably deserve it. His answer catches me off guard, and we sit in silence for a few moments. I don't understand why you did it, I say, my control slipping as tears begin to well up in my eyes. But I'll always love you. You're still my son. As soon as I finish speaking, he drops the phone, buries his head in his hands, and begins to sob uncontrollably. Like he did when he was 10. Then he picks the phone up again. Those kids I killed at school, Mom, he begins. You have to understand, they deserved it. They needed to be taken out the way they were. The officer behind him overhears the conversation and keeps a sharp eye on Adam. If they were bullying you, son, that's terrible, I tell him. But that doesn't mean they deserve to die in. They weren't bullying me, he yells, cutting me off, his outburst drawing the attention of nearby inmates and visitors. The guard steps in, grabbing him by the shoulder. That's enough, Adam. Time to go. Mom, he whispers through the line, before he is dragged out of the room. You need to look into the glove compartment. I walk out of the room, dazed. Was my son paranoid? Hallucinating? I storm out of the facility and get in my car. The long drive back to the city is a blur. My mind spins. How didn't I see this? How could I not have known what he could do? As a single mom, always tired from work, he just seemed like a quiet, geeky teen. What snaps me back to reality is noticing a car that has been behind me since I left the prison. A black vehicle, driven by a clean-shaven, military-looking man in dark glasses, follows me. He looks eerily familiar to the guard from the visitation room. I take several random turns and he stays on my tail. I pull into my neighborhood store. He parks at a distance, still in view. I rush in, grab what I need, and get in line, still trying to make sense of what the hell is happening. Why is he following me? They already have Adam. As I wait in line, I hear someone call my name from behind, and I jump in fright. It's not the man from the car, but I almost wish it were. It's a pale woman with a blank expression, Jenna, the mother of one of the 3 kids Adam killed at the school shooting. I freeze. "Hi, Claire," she says. It takes me a second. "Hi, Jenna. How are you?" "Not very good," she replies, not bitterly, just honestly. I flinch. "Hey, I just want to say I'm really sorry for your loss," I begin. "What my son did was unforgivable and—" "Claire, please," she cuts in. "This isn't your fault. We both lost our sons that day." She takes my hand in hers. "From one mother to another," she tells me, leaning in. "We need to help each other." Then she hugs me, so tightly I nearly collapse into tears. No one had shown me that kind of compassion until now. I leave the store with new strength, ready to go straight to that car and confront the man who had been following me, but he's gone. Thank God. I get in my car and as I'm ready to get home, I remember Adam's words, and I check the glove compartment. There's nothing unusual in there except for a small metallic device. A flash drive. Back home, I go straight to my laptop. It's already dark. I know exactly why Adam would have hidden the USB drive in the car. His room, computers, phone, and even video games were all seized and searched the day after the events. Even my own laptop was taken. I had to get a new one from work. What I don't know is what he needed to hide. My hands shake as I plug it in and open a folder full of images. They're photos of the 3 kids who died, mostly candid shots, capturing them in normal moments at school. The same 3 always appeared, 2 boys and 1 girl. The pictures, likely taken on Adam's phone, showed them eating lunch, walking home, studying at the library. Just ordinary stuff. Was Adam stalking them? They didn't look like bullies. Then the photos start to get weird. One of the boys kissing a girl, someone else, not from the 3, behind the football field. Holding hands. Private. Then, suddenly, one set in a bleak concrete space. The 3 kids, soaked in blood, standing over what looked like the girl from before, dead. Her body ripped to pieces on the floor. There was something strange in their eyes. In the photos, they were solid white. I had to adjust in my chair, rattled. Then more. The trio lured people. A janitor, an old woman, another child. The last pictures in the folder showed them emerging from an alley, shirts stained red, those blank, glowing eyes again. The photos were clearly taken in hiding. I nearly threw up. Was this what Adam meant? What are these kids and what were they doing? That's when I heard the noise of my front door opening. Is someone there? I called out from my room. Only Adam and I lived here. I had no idea who it could be. I got no answer, and the thought that it might be the man in the black car sent a chill down my spine. I walked slowly down the hallway. I just called the police, so whoever you are, leave now, I shouted, bluffing. My phone was in the kitchen. When I reached the hallway, I saw a figure standing still at the front door. It was Jenna, the mother of one of Adam's victims. One of the kids in the photos. Jenna? I asked, confused. Do you need something? Her face was blank, robotic, emotionless. She took a few steps toward me. I don't know what Adam told you or what he left behind as evidence, she said, voice flat. But I can't let you keep it. Then her eyes turned white, just like the 3 kids in the picture. And my body, desperate to run, couldn't move. It just stood there, every muscle in me locked tight in the same position it was when her eyes changed. Even my eyelids stopped working. I couldn't blink. I felt like a statue, except for my heartbeat, which had gone completely wild. Jenna walked slowly, savoring my frozen panic. Don't even try, Claire, she said with a grin, now just 5 feet away. Humans are such pathetic creatures. She raised her hands, and her fingers began to shift, turning into blades, thick and gleaming like solid steel. That's when I heard the gunshots. Multiple and quick. If I could, I would have closed my eyes shut, but I saw Jenna collapse in front of me, riddled with bullets. The man from the black car, the same guard who had stood with Adam, was behind her, holding a gun, his eyes locked on her body. He must have fired half a dozen rounds because Jenna was lying in a pool of blood. He stepped closer, still aiming at her head. "Don't do this, please." "I'll stay still," she begged, but he pulled the trigger one last time. That's when my body unfroze, and I collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, sobbing uncontrollably. The man knelt beside me and placed a hand on my shoulder, gently. "Ms. Claire," he said carefully, "I know this is a lot to process, but you're not safe here. What your son uncovered, it's not from this world." Story 7. I can't remember how I met my best friend. Kaylee has been my best friend for as long as I can remember. For me, that's not a figure of speech. I literally can't remember how I met her. I can't find any photos of me with her before 3rd grade, so I guess I met her around then. Strangely, though, she's not in any of my class photos. I remember her coming over my house all the time, but I don't ever remember going to hers. These things never struck me as weird until a few days ago, when I really sat down and thought about them. Some things in life, you just sort of accept as fact, right? They've gone on so long you don't remember how they started. Like how I always put eggs on the top shelf of the fridge, or how I always tuck my blanket under my feet before going to bed. I don't remember how it started. I've just always done it that way as long as I can remember. So how did I meet her? I don't remember. They say if you lose your sight, you don't see pitch black, or nothingness, or a void. You just have the absence of sight. That's how it is for me with Kaylee. There's no remnant of a memory, nothing on the tip of my tongue. It just isn't there. A few days ago, I asked her about it. "Do you remember how we met?" "What do you mean?" she asked, her smile faltering. "Well, we met when I was around 8, right? But you went to a different school. So, how did we meet?" "It was at that summer camp, wasn't it?" she asked. "With the bottle rockets?" "I don't think so. I'd only gone one summer, and I was pretty sure that was the summer after 4th grade. Church, then." "Which church?" Kaylee paused. "The one off Main Street with the steeple?" "Which one?" "Oh, I'm not sure. You know I'm not religious," she said with a laugh. "The one on the corner, or on Elm Street?" She paused. "Elm, I think." "Well, my parents took me to St. Paul's on the corner," I said. "So it couldn't have been church." "Huh," she said, shrugging. "Then I don't know how we met." It was weird. She seemed confused, and yet, it almost felt like she was playing the role of a fortune teller, throwing out vague answers and hoping I'd jump in with more details. "So you don't remember how we met?" I said, with finality. "I guess I don't." She shook her head, her bleach blonde hair shaking around her face. "Isn't that silly? We've been best friends for 10 years, and we can't even remember how we met." I wanted to ask her more, but then my roommate got home, and my roommate is a bit persnickety, so we decided to quietly watch a movie in my room to give her some peace. It seemed weird to bring up again. I was probably overthinking things. That night, however, I couldn't sleep. As Kaylee slept peacefully on the futon in the common area, I lay wide awake in my bed. Why can't I remember? And then a thought occurred to me. Someone else must remember. I went on Facebook and clicked over to our 21 mutual friends. I started scrolling, making a mental list of who was most likely to know. But then, a sudden realization hit me. Each of these friends, I'd introduced myself to her. None of these were her friends originally. They were all mine. I squinted at the screen. How does that make sense? Has she really never introduced me to her friends? And now that I thought about it, she was always visiting me at my dorm, making the 2-hour drive. She offered because I was broke and couldn't afford the gas, but maybe there was more to it than that. Why had I never thought about this before? I scrolled back through my Facebook photos, to some childhood photos I'd posted. Kaylee was in them, sure as day. She looked different. Her hair wasn't bleached then, her face was chubbier, but from the dimples to the sharp chin, it was her. I clicked back on her Facebook page and scrolled, and that's when I realized something. Every single post, Involved me or one of our 21 mutual friends. I didn't see a single tag by someone I didn't know. Well, that could be the privacy settings, couldn't it? Like her friends who've tagged her have made the post only visible to their friends or mutuals. Or something. But not a single post? It was like her entire life revolved around me. Like every single event in her life was related to me, directly or indirectly. I gave up on sleep. I got out of bed and walked into the common room, grabbing a Coke from the mini fridge. Kaylee was sleeping soundly on the futon. I glanced over at her, my heart pounding. Her pale skin was blue in the light from the microwave clock. Muffled music came from my roommate's room. She was still up. With my mind racing and no one else to talk to, I went over. "Can I come in for a second?" I called quietly through the door. As soon as she opened it, I darted inside. "There's something weird about Kaylee." Isabel scoffed. "Yeah, duh. What?" "She's weird. Always has been. You just noticing this now?" I frowned at her. "Okay, sorry, that came out really mean. But it's true. She's just weird. I wish she wouldn't come over every weekend, but since you're really good about Ben coming over, I never say anything." "She doesn't come over every weekend," I huffed. "It's been a lot. I mean, she was here for homecoming weekend, then those 2 weekends in October, then Halloween." "She wasn't here on Halloween," I protested. "Oh yes, she was," Isabel replied. "Ben and I had to go over to his place because she was here with you." I shook my head. "No. She wasn't here on Halloween." We stared at each other. Isabel's irritation melted to confusion. "She wasn't here. I had COVID, remember? But I saw her. When we came back from the Beta Theta Pi party, she was here. We had to go to Ben's place." The room started to tilt around me. I remember being so sick that weekend, in and out of sleep half the day. "But she was here? Without me knowing?" "You must have gotten the weekends confused," I said weakly. "No, I remember it clearly because we were both in our costumes. Do you know how itchy that Harley Quinn wig is?" Kaylee must have let herself in. But why? Now that I thought about it, that weekend, there had been some weird stuff. I'd chalked it up to delirium at the time, but I remember not being able to find my phone. My milk was missing from the fridge. I thought it had been Isabel or Ben. But it had been Kaylee. She was here. Watching me. Watching me sleep? What the fuck? I was jolted out of my thoughts by a thump outside. Coming from the common room. "Kaylee," I whispered. The footsteps, slow and deliberate, started down the hall. My door creaked open. "She's looking for me." I ran over to the door and locked it. I held a finger to my lips, standing absolutely still, so still I could hear the blood pulsing in my ears. The footsteps started back up, into the common room, and then towards our door. Getting louder. Isabel glanced down, and her eyes went wide. "She's right there," Isabel mouthed to me. The footsteps stopped. The door handle made a ratcheting sound as Kaylee tried to turn it. Once, twice, 3 times. "Haley? Are you in there?" I held my breath. "Isabel?" I closed my eyes. She'll just go away. She'll think Isabel's asleep and I just stepped out. Isabel's computer is on, but it's dark in here, so we're fine. I took in a slow, quiet breath. We're fine. She's just going to go back to sleep. I know you're in there. A raspy whisper. Unlike anything I'd heard Kaylee say. And it was coming from the crack under the door. I could feel her breath against my ankles. Isabel clapped a hand over her mouth. I took a shaking step away from the door. "Let me in," she whispered. Her slim, pale fingers shot through the crack under the door and swept back and forth, quickly, frantically, trying to grab any part of us she could. "Let me in now." Isabel grabbed her phone off the desk and dialed 911. The fingers retracted, and footsteps sounded in the common room. By the time the police got here, Kaylee was gone. It's been 2 days and I haven't heard from Kaylee. I think about her every waking minute. I've barely eaten or slept. I keep replaying that night through my head, wondering what she would have done if I hadn't locked the door. I've done my research though, combed through social media and photo albums and everything. There is no physical evidence that Kaylee existed in my life before a year ago. Because those photos are from my childhood? My mom insists I never had a friend named Kaylee. When she dug the old photo albums out of the attic, she wasn't in any of them. Kaylee's face only appeared in the digital scans of the photos I'd posted online. Photos I'd posted in the past year. And those 21 mutual friends, they all met her in the past year too. She'd made an effort to befriend my friends, find them online. But none of the friendships went back more than a year. I'd checked each and every one. And now, suddenly, I'm having trouble recalling all those memories with her. I can barely remember what she looked like. Blonde hair, pale skin, dimples, I knew that much. But if you showed me a lineup of 10 girls with those qualities, I don't think I'd be able to pick her out. Which leads me to the horrifying conclusion. If she ever finds me again, whether that's in days or years or decades, I won't even know it's her. Story 8. My house is empty. But my friend who is deaf and blind insists someone is here. They say, seeing is believing, but if I'd followed that advice, I'd be dead now. It was a deaf-blind friend who first told me there was someone in the house with me. I scoffed. I didn't believe him. I looked out across the wide, open, empty living room. I looked upstairs in the den and spare bedroom and out at the patio and in the kitchen. It was just the two of us. But my friend, Will, insisted. While he was sitting on the base of the stairs, tracing his fingers along the ornate sculpted banister, I went upstairs to grab something from the den. He felt another set of footsteps on the stairs after mine. Following me up, he told me afterward in sign language when we sat down at the table for tea. Then he asked me who else was here. I chuckled, my fingers tickling his leg in laughter, and told him he must have imagined it. But he claimed he could smell them. When I asked him to describe the smell, he said it smelled bad, a sort of garbage smell, someone who needed a bath or hung out in the trash. Maybe my trash needed to go out, I said, and insisted it was just us. Are you sure? He and I were supposed to be working on the script for a game we were developing together, but he interrupted my suggestions to exclaim, "There. Do you smell it?" I didn't smell a thing, nor did I see anyone in the living room with us. Does your nose actually work, or is it just a decoration on your face? Will burst, exasperated. When I dropped him off back at his apartment later after we'd finished our work together, as he was getting out of the car, he warned me again that I definitely have another person hiding somewhere in my home. His hands described the feel to me, 2 fingers of his right hand walking up my arm toward my shoulder, 2 fingers of his left following behind, softer. Then he tapped his hand along my arm, showing me the feel of the vibration. First heavier, more solid, my steps, and then lighter but still palpable, the second set of steps following mine and vibrating the wooden stairs. I patted his arm in affirmation and told him I'd search the house when I got home. Be careful, he said, his signing emphatically slow, and gave my arm a final squeeze before tapping his way to the front of his building with his white cane. As soon as I got home, I searched the house. But I couldn't imagine where an intruder might conceal themselves. It was a cozy house, 2 levels with small square footage. The rent was suspiciously low, but I chalked that up to the lack of AC, creaky pipes, and age of the place. I looked under the sink, in the closets, in the cupboards, in the spare bedroom. I even bought a camera and set it up, but all I captured overnight was myself sleepwalking. I vaguely remembered waking on the staircase and returning to bed. Other than that, the motion capture didn't turn on. According to the video, I was alone in my house. Still, the next morning I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. It said that if you lose one sense, your others become sharper to compensate, but what if the reverse is also true? Was my reliance on my eyes causing my brain to shut out my other senses? What if I tried closing my eyes? It seemed silly. Even so, on a whim, that evening I went around the house wearing a blindfold. I was feeling my way through the kitchen, filling a glass with water from the sink when I felt, the presence of someone. I couldn't pinpoint why. I just had the sense of not being alone. The hairs on my neck rose. And suddenly I was absolutely certain someone was coming up behind me. I snatched off my blindfold. Just me. Still, the feeling lingered for a moment, those goosebumps persisting on my arms. I put the blindfold back on and puttered around in the kitchen for a while. It was then I noticed the smell. Like rotten meat. Like unwashed flesh. spoiled and awful, and it was so faint, just wafting occasionally. The hairs on the nape of my neck stood up. I went upstairs, trying to follow the smell, but I lost it almost immediately when I went into my den. I came back downstairs, my fingers lightly tracing the wall. I stopped, because I felt footsteps behind me. Felt the soft reverberation on the wooden staircase, just a beat after my own. It was just like Will had described to me. Someone was here, right behind me. I felt a cold breath on my ear. I tore off the blindfold and whirled around. The staircase was empty. That night, as I lay in bed, I had trouble drifting to sleep. I was afraid of what might happen overnight. And sure enough, I woke up on the stairs, sleepwalking. But instead of returning to bed, I tried to keep myself in that dreamy state, and I held my eyes closed. My arm was cold. It took me a moment to realize that someone was holding my hand. A touch of icy fingers drawing me forward. Those dead fingers leading me up the stairs. Every instinct told me to tear my hand away and run, but I let the dead hand guide me up until I was on the landing. The rotten smell made my eyes water as the door to the spare bedroom opened. An overwhelming sense of dread made it hard to breathe as the hand guided me across the room. Then my fingers touched the cool handle to the balcony door and pushed the door open, fresh air gusting around me. I yanked back, terror shooting through me, and rushed for the light switch. I was alone again. I'm now looking for a new place to live. Will was right. I'm not alone. And my life is in danger every night I stay here. I've got to get out as soon as I can. But my budget is tight, and housing is scarce in this area. So until I find a place, I've installed a bolt on the balcony doors and moved a heavy bookcase in front of them, and I've locked that spare bedroom. You see, I did some research and found out that the tenant who lived here before me died by hanging himself from the balcony of the upstairs bedroom. Before him, there was an old woman who lived here with her daughter, and the daughter was also found hanging. In fact, I don't know how many people before me have died here, seemingly by taking their own lives. The house is not reported to be haunted, because no one has ever seen a ghost here, but every day I feel someone in the house with me, their footsteps treading just behind mine. And every night, those dead fingers take my hand and try to lead me out to the balcony. Story, mine. I found my missing brother on a forum for the dead. I never thought much about online forums until one of them brought my brother back. Ryan had been missing for 2 years. One day, he went out to grab coffee and never came back. No suspicious activity on his bank account, no weird phone calls, no signs of struggle, just gone. The police said he'd likely been abducted, but without evidence, they couldn't do much. My family fell apart. My mom stopped eating. My dad stopped talking. And I just stopped feeling. Late one night, while spiraling through forums about unsolved disappearances, I stumbled upon a thread titled, Messages from Beyond, Connecting with the Lost. It was buried deep within an obscure corner of the internet and full of people claiming to receive messages from the dead. It sounded ridiculous, but one comment caught my attention. A user named Echoing Void posted, "Sometimes the missing don't know they're gone. Sometimes they're here, looking for home." Below, someone replied, "How do you know?" And Void answered, "Because I am one." For whatever reason, grief, desperation, or lack of sleep, I created an account and messaged Void. I typed, "If you're really one of the missing, prove it. Tell me something only you would know." The response came within minutes. "What do you want me to prove? That you once broke Ryan's nose during a stupid fight over a game of Mario Kart? That he forgave you before you forgave yourself?" My stomach dropped. I hadn't told anyone about that, not even my parents. It was just one of those childhood moments you carry like a secret scar. I asked, "Who are you?" Void's reply, "I think you know." The next few weeks were a blur. I spent hours every night talking to Void. He said the world he was in was a fractured reflection of ours, familiar but empty. The sky was always gray, the streets abandoned, the air heavy with silence. He couldn't explain how he got there, only that he woke up in this place and couldn't leave. The more we talked, the more he sounded like Ryan. He even remembered details no one else could, like the nickname he used to call our childhood dog or how he'd secretly taped my embarrassing middle school dance recital to blackmail me later. One night, Void said something that terrified me. He typed, "They're watching me now. They don't like that I'm talking to you." I asked who they were, but his responses became cryptic. "The shadows. The ones who keep us here. They don't like noise." That was the last I heard from him for weeks. Then, a new message appeared in my inbox. "Do you want to see me?" Attached was a link to a live video feed. I hesitated but clicked. The stream showed a dimly lit street that looked eerily like the one Ryan and I grew up on. The houses were distorted, their shapes wavering as if viewed through heat haze. In the distance, a figure walked toward the camera. As they drew closer, I recognized his face. It was Ryan. But something was off. His eyes were too wide, his movements stiff, like a puppet on strings. He smiled at the camera, but it wasn't the smile I remembered. It was forced, unnatural. He raised a hand and waved. In the live chat beside the video, he typed, "It's me. I told you I was here." I couldn't move. My heart felt like it was trying to escape my chest. Suddenly, the camera shook violently. The shadows behind Ryan began to shift and ripple, forming towering figures with jagged edges. They moved closer, their distorted limbs reaching for him. Ryan typed, "They're coming. You have to help me. Find the door." The feed was cut out. I spent the next few days piecing together everything he'd said about his world, looking for clues about the door. It wasn't much, but he'd mentioned a specific place from our childhood, an old, abandoned cabin in the woods where we used to play. I drove there, half expecting nothing. The cabin was just as we'd left it, rotting and overgrown. Inside, I found a trapdoor beneath a threadbare rug. The ladder below led to a tunnel that stretched on for what felt like miles. At the end was a heavy iron door with strange carvings. As I touched it, my phone buzzed. A message from Void, "They know you're here. Don't let them in." Before I could reply, the shadows began to seep through the walls, crawling toward me like living tar. I shoved the door open and stepped through. I don't know how to explain what happened next. One moment, I was in the tunnel. The next, I was standing in the gray, empty world Ryan had described. The air was heavy, the silence deafening. And there he was, standing a few feet away, staring at me with wide, desperate eyes. "Ryan," I whispered. But before he could respond, the shadows surged forward. The last thing I remember is his scream. I woke up in my bed the next morning, clutching a piece of paper I'd never seen before. Written on it, in Ryan's handwriting, were the words, "Don't stop looking. There's another door." Story 10. My father walked out on me 20 years ago. Tonight I found out why. I hadn't seen my father in years. It had been 2 decades since I had set eyes on the man. My last clear memory of him was the one of him walking out the door when I was 5 years old. I had been watching cartoons. I turned just in time to see my dad's back as he walked out the door, wearing his standard blue jean jacket, with his head down as the door slammed behind him. My mother was on the floor, sitting cross-legged and crying a few feet away from me. The sight shocked me. My mom never cried. She was my rock, and I had never seen even as much as a tear from her. I crawled over to her and sat in her lap while she sobbed, completely at a loss of what to do. I remember I stroked her hair to comfort her. Something she had done countless times for me when I was sick or upset. "Where's Dad going?" I asked innocently. My mom looked at her, her eyes red and puffy from the crying. "Your daddy is gone, sweetie. Your daddy left us," she mumbled. The divorce had to be done in absentia. No one knew where he had gone. I remember walking around town with my grandmother putting up missing posters of my father. She could never accept that he had simply walked away from all of us. The posters stayed up for a few months before they all got torn down. Years passed, Mom remarried a great guy. I got therapy to deal with my dad leaving and eventually went off to college. Life was normal. Though I never stopped thinking about my dad, not really. Even when I thought I came to terms with it, I'd get the urge to Google his name or search for him on social media. But nothing ever turned up. That's why when he finally did message me, it came as a complete surprise. I was at work, messing around on my phone while I had reports to write when it popped up on my screen. "Is this David Lewis? From Topeka? And your mom's name is Penelope? If so, then this is your father. I have been trying to get in contact with you." I sat and stared at the message in disbelief. I set the phone down. Then I picked it up again and read the message. While I was processing everything, more messages appeared. David, I'm so sorry for everything. For these years I stayed away. I really need you to answer me. I need you to agree to come meet with me. My first instinct wasn't to reply. I was half convinced this was some kind of scam, someone knew about my past and they were going to ask for a Venmo or money transfer. I finally replied. How do I know this is really my father and not some kind of scam? I waited for a reply. My heart was pounding, and a rush of thoughts were going through my head. If this was really my dad, I had a lot of things to say to him. Most of them weren't good. I promise you I'm your dad. When you were a kid you had a ginger cat named Polka that died when you were 3. You had a stuffed teddy bear you slept with every night whose name was Mr. Simon. Please, David, this is really me and I need you to agree to meet with me. I stared at my phone. I was racking my brain trying to think of what to say. Tell him off? Tell him I'd gladly meet him because I had missed him all these years? I did neither. I need some time to process this. Let me write back later this evening. I'm at work and I need to focus. Holding the phone, I waited for his reply. It came quickly. I understand. But please, I need an answer by tonight. Going back to my desk to work on the reports was almost surreal. It was like I was a ghost in my own body. I did get everything done though. It gave me something to focus on. Once I was home, I went straight to the bedroom and flopped on the bed, phone in hand. My fiancée wasn't home yet. Today was her late day at work. Of all the people I wanted to talk to the most, it was her, but she wouldn't be able to answer even if I did call. I read over the messages again. Honestly, I didn't have to reply at all. I could block him. Let him sit around and wonder what he did wrong to make me abandon him. But I did finally message back. The curiosity was too much. Why do you even want to meet with me? If there's anything you want to say to me, just type it out. His reply was almost immediate. David, I'm so glad you wrote back. I was afraid I had lost you. Trust me, I need to see you in person. If you never want to see or speak to me after that, I promise, I'll never reach out to you again. I lay the phone down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. This was just too surreal to me. The front door opened, and Alicia walked in. I'm home, she called out. She walked into the bedroom when she couldn't find me in the living room. She looked down at me and furrowed her brow. Are you okay? Did something happen? She asked, concerned. I shook my head and held up my phone. My dad just messaged me. He wants to meet me tonight to talk in person. I don't know if I should agree to go or not, I explained, holding out the phone to her so she could read what he wrote for herself. Her eyes went wide. Of all the things I could have told her, this didn't seem to be one that she expected. She took the phone and read over the messages. What do you want to do, babe? I know he's your dad, but he's essentially a stranger. You don't owe him anything. You still don't have to meet with him. Alicia assured me, holding my hand. I think I want to meet him. Even if it's just to find out why he left. I want to hear it from him, I said, squeezing her hand back. I turned back to the phone and typed out the message. Where do you want to meet? Send me the address. His response. Thank you so much, David. This means everything to me. I'm sending the address now. I was only mildly surprised when the address he sent me was only 30 minutes from our apartment. I looked it up on Google Maps and it showed a tiny cabin out in the woods. I felt a stab of anger from knowing he was this close to me and was only now reaching out to me. How long had he lived there? Years? Months? I would find out soon enough. Alicia insisted on coming with me, but I convinced her to stay at home. She had the address where I would be, and if she didn't hear from me in 2 hours, she would call me. And if she didn't hear from me, she'd call the cops. She wasn't convinced yet that this wasn't some elaborate scam. I had plenty of time to think on the drive out to my dad's place. When I arrived, I felt a pang of anger at the house. It was a lovely little log cabin. I knew enough about the area to know it wasn't cheap, and I wondered what he had been doing all this time to afford such a nice place. Not paying child support, that was for sure. The car had barely come to halt before the door opened and a man opened the door and awkwardly walked up to the driver window. David, the man said, breathless, a small smile on my face. It was my dad. Now that he was here in the flesh, it didn't feel real at all. He looked haggard and thinner than his photo had let on. I stepped out of the car and backed away to let me out, the small smile still on his face. Everything I had planned to say to him vanished from my head as he gestured towards the house. Come on. Let's get you inside. I have a lot to explain before it's time. He started moving to the cabin, not looking back to see if I was following. I followed. I started at the back of his head, glaring. He hadn't tried to hug me or touch me in any way, for which I was glad, but I was also disappointed that he hadn't tried. The inside was nice. Minimally but tastefully decorated. It had a woman's touch, as Alicia would like to say. Maybe he had a girlfriend or even a wife. Mom remarried. His name is Steve, he's a great guy, I blurted out. My dad turned and looked at me. The smile fell from his face and his eyes dropped. I know. I saw that on social media. She looks happy, he said softly. I shrugged. I had said that to hurt him, but now all it did was make me feel a little guilty. Why did you ask me to come here? After all this time? I just want you to know, if you are going to ask about getting a kidney or money from me, you can forget it, I snapped, my voice sharper than I had intended. I wanted to play it cool, collected, but I was too frazzled. He stared at me. His eyes were watery as if he was fighting back tears. He seemed at a loss for words. I shifted awkwardly on the couch, averting my eyes. I just needed to see you. I wanted to explain why I left. I'm not going to ask for forgiveness, but I do want you to understand why I did what I did, he said in a rush. I looked up at him. The obvious answer was that there had been another woman. Or maybe some kind of debt to the mafia, anything really. But now that I was about to learn the reason, all I felt was a slow simmering anger. No matter what excuse he gave me, it wouldn't be good enough. I'm a werewolf, he said simply, spreading his arms in a gesture of resignation. I had to admit that all the things I had thought he might say, this was not one of them. I see, I said slowly. He was mentally ill. Maybe he was schizophrenic or had some kind of mental break. Look, if you brought me all the way out here so you could spin some kind of fairy tale about why you left, save it. I can tell you're doing well for yourself. There's no need to lie to me, I gestured angrily around the cabin. His eyes followed my hands as I pointed to our surroundings, and a tiny smile formed on his lips. Oh, this isn't my house, David. The people who live here are on vacation and I broke in. But we needed a quiet place to talk, he explained, stepping closer. I stood up and sidestepped away, moving closer to the door. Are you serious? Do you have any idea how much trouble you'd be in if you're caught? You go to jail for stuff like that, I stammered. This wasn't going how I thought it would at all. I was wishing it was a scammer, it would have been less heartbreaking. He moved towards me, he lifted his shirt, and that's when I saw he had a gun holster on his belt with a small pistol housed in it. In a smooth motion he lifted out the gun and held it out to me. I need you to do one thing for me. In all these years I've been away, I've done nothing but try to find a cure for this. To end it, to cure it, it doesn't matter. All I could find was this. The only thing that can truly stop me is silver. I have this thing loaded with silver bullets. It had to be done by someone who loves the afflicted. Otherwise, it won't work. Trust me, I've tried the alternatives. His eyes were dripping tears as he thrust the revolver into my hands. I stared at it dumbfounded. This is insane. You're insane. You need to go to a hospital. I stared in shock at the gun. I'd never held one before. It must be done by someone who loves me. My parents are dead. I know your mom doesn't love me. It must be you, you're all I have. He gulped as he spoke. I held out the gun to him, but he stepped away and walked towards the door, blocking the exit. Look, we don't have much time. Once night falls, this will happen quickly. And you should know I don't have control over myself when the change comes. I've killed people without even remembering it. You won't be any different even if you are my son. He gulped again, the color draining from his face. I took a step back from him on reflex, clutching the gun to my chest protectively. I didn't want to give it up anymore. I didn't believe for a second that he was a werewolf, but giving him the gun seemed like a bad idea. It's time to go outside now. No reason to ruin this nice house. He huffed, his breath was coming faster like he had just run a mile. His face, already pale, was taking on an alarmingly waxy texture that was making my stomach turn. I had no idea if he was having a stroke, but he suddenly did not look good. He stumbled outside and I followed him, not knowing what to do. I glanced at my car. I could just run to it and leave. Take the gun with me and call an ambulance for him. Don't even think of trying to make it to the car. You won't have time anyway. He looked up as the last rays of daylight vanished over the horizon. It's happening. Forgive me, David. Please know I always loved you. I hope you still love me, he rasped as he doubled over, seemingly in pain. Dad, I gasped, taking a few steps towards him. No, he screeched at me, holding his hands out and backing away, before he fell to the ground and started convulsing. It happened instantaneously. In the movies I'd watched about werewolves, the transformation is always drawn out, painful and dramatic. But this wasn't it. His skin split open like it wasn't even skin anymore. It parted like his flesh was made of paper mache. My vision blurred as I took everything in. The beast rising from the sheds of skin and clothing and looking at me. Its eyes were a vicious amber, glowing and filled with pure malevolence. There was nothing human in them. We stared at each other for just a few seconds before it took a leap towards me, closing the distance between us in a split second. I shrieked and brought up my arm. The one with he gun. The creature was close enough for me to touch. I could smell the wet animal smell of its fur as it reached out towards me. I fired the gun on instinct. I fired twice, one bullet hitting the thing in its cheek and the second in the chest where the heart should be. The beast let out an almost dainty and human-sounding gasp as it collapsed sideways. It looked surprised as it hit the dirt. I dropped the gun, my fingers numb from shock, and I ran to my car. I started the car and peeled out of the driveway. The headlights briefly illuminated the thing's body as I drove away. It hadn't moved. The shock hit me as I was driving, and I struggled to keep myself on the road. I kept looking in the rearview mirror, expecting to see that thing chasing me down. But there was only darkness behind me. I didn't call the cops or an ambulance. I cried silently the whole way home. There was nothing I could tell anyone that would make any sense to anyone. Alicia had waited up for me, and when I burst in the front door she gasped and asked me what had happened. I couldn't tell her the truth. I made up a lie on the spot, that I had met my dad, and he was a drug addict asking for money. That the cabin wasn't even his but a place he had broken into. I had to talk her out of calling the cops. There was no way I could ever explain why there was a dead lycanthrope in the driveway. She stayed up with me until exhaustion finally took her and she passed out on the couch. I stayed awake though. There was no way I could sleep. I sat in the dark sipping coffee and shaking. When the first rays of light peeked through the blinds, I let out a sigh of relief. The sunlight brought sanity with it, and I could start trying to convince myself that I had hallucinated this whole night. That's when my phone buzzed and I reflexively looked at the message that popped up on my screen, and my heart dropped. It was just a single sentence. David, it didn't work. Story 11. Count your windows twice every night. I didn't. It started with an innocent enough warning from the old man next door. He was a reclusive figure, always dressed in faded flannel and worn-out boots, with gray stubble that covered most of his face like a second layer of skin. Nobody in the neighborhood ever spoke to him much, but when he saw me locking my door one evening, he shuffled over with a strange urgency in his eyes. You live alone now, don't ya? His voice was raspy, like he hadn't spoken to another human in days. Yeah, I replied, a bit uneasy but polite. Why? He leaned in close, his breath hot with the scent of whiskey. You better count your windows twice every night before bed, he said, his eyes narrowing. Make sure they're all closed, all locked. If you don't, well, let's just say it ain't good. I chuckled awkwardly, unsure if he was joking or just drunk. Sure, I'll do that. The old man's expression didn't change. I'm serious, kid. Count them. Twice. Or they'll come in. I watched as he shuffled back to his house, a creeping unease settling in my gut. They'll come in? What did that even mean? But I shook it off as the ramblings of a lonely, old man with a little too much time and liquor on his hands. That night, as I wandered around my house before bed, I found myself thinking about his strange warning. I stood in front of the first window in my bedroom and closed it tightly, then the one in the kitchen. After a second of hesitation, I moved through the house, checking each window carefully, just as he had suggested. One in the bathroom, two in the living room, each of them shut and locked. When I reached the last one in the hallway, I counted again in my head. 5 windows. All sealed. It felt ridiculous, but I did it anyway. Twice, just like he'd said. Nothing happened that night, of course. But over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I noticed subtle things. A draft even though the windows were closed, strange sounds late at night, and, most unsettling, a growing sense of being watched. The next week, I came home late from work, exhausted, and forgot about the old man's warning. I went straight to bed, my body too heavy with fatigue to bother checking the windows. I didn't even think about it until the middle of the night, when I woke to a soft tapping sound. At first, I thought it was raining, but the night was dry. The tapping grew louder, more insistent. My heart began to race as I sat up in bed, listening. It was coming from the hallway window, the last one I'd always check. I hesitated, fear gripping me, but curiosity pulled me out of bed. As I approached the hallway, the tapping stopped abruptly, leaving behind an eerie silence. My pulse pounded in my ears. The window was closed. Of course, it was. But as I reached for the lock, I saw it. A handprint on the glass. Not mine. Something else, something that shouldn't be there. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. The handprint was too large, too distorted. It pressed against the glass from the outside, as though something had been watching me. Frantic, I ran through the house, checking every window, counting them twice, just like the old man had warned. But the windows were all closed, all locked. Yet the feeling that something was wrong persisted, stronger than ever. The next night, I made sure to check the windows before bed, counting each one meticulously. 5 windows. Twice. Then I slept. But the tapping came again. This time louder, faster. It wasn't just one window either. It was all of them. A frantic, rhythmic tapping from every room, surrounding me. I leapt out of bed, my body trembling with fear. The windows, they were all shut, yet the tapping wouldn't stop. I backed into the center of the living room, cold sweat trickling down my spine. And that's when I saw it, the shadow moving just outside the glass. A figure, tall and lanky, with impossibly long limbs and a face that seemed to shift and warp under the dim moonlight. It pressed against the window, its grotesque face turning slowly toward me. Eyes, if you could call them that, met mine hollow and hungry. The tapping stopped, but the window began to creak. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in terror, but eventually, the figure melted back into the darkness, leaving me shaken and breathless. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I rushed to the old man's house, desperate for answers. But when I knocked, there was no response. The neighbor told me he'd passed away 3 days ago, right around the time the tapping started. Now I count my windows twice every night. I don't forget anymore. Because I know they're still out there, waiting. And if I slip up again, they'll come in. Story 12. Every night my entire town locks down for 12 minutes. I finally learned why. You know the kind of town where everyone knows everyone? Where the local diner serves coffee in mugs stamped with your name, and everyone will lend a hand to a neighbor in need. A place where generations of families grew up together? Well, that is the sort of place where I live. Sure, it is a bit rustic, hell I barely have reliable internet. But it is nice enough for us. It's the kind of place where time feels like it's standing still, except for one thing, the nights. The nights here are a little different. I've lived here all my life, and there's no place I'd rather be. Or at least, that's what I used to think. This place has its quirks, like any small town, but there's a big one that stands out for us. You see, every night, without fail at 11:38 p.m., the town locks down. I'm not talking about just closing up shops and less people being out and about. I'm talking about a real lockdown. Doors slam shut and are barred, windows rattle and lock, and everyone knows they have to be inside and stay inside, at least for what happens next. The next part is strange. No one ever sees anything moving out there directly, but we all just know. We just know that somehow, something outside is trying to get in. An eerie silence falls over the streets. It's like the whole town is holding its breath. Then in 12 minutes exactly, it is just over. I've always wondered why it happens at exactly 11:38 p.m. People here don't talk about it much, but when they do, they whisper. They say it's just the way things are, that it's been happening for as long as anyone can remember. But I know better. I've seen it. Whatever it is. The first time I noticed it, I was still pretty young. I think I was 10 or 11. I'd stayed up late reading some of my favorite comic books. My parents warned me, like many other kids in town, that we had to go to bed early, but if we did get up, then absolutely no leaving the house or leaving any windows or doors open. I was not asleep, but was still following the rules, when I heard the strangest sound. It was a low, guttural hum that seemed to vibrate through the walls. I looked out the window, and that's when I saw it. The streets were empty, but there was a presence. It's hard to describe. It wasn't a person or an animal. It was something else. Something that didn't feel like it belonged. It moved with this strange, jerky motion, like it wasn't entirely in control of its own body. It radiated a disturbing sense of distortion that made my head hurt and my eyes had a difficult time focusing on it. I could feel this overwhelming sense of hunger that made my skin crawl. Before I knew it, it was over. It had passed my house and I realized I had been staring out my window in a hypnotic daze. It was almost midnight and I went to sleep and did not tell my parents about the disturbing thing I had seen. I didn't see it again for years, but the feeling never left. Every night at 11:38 when the town shuts down, I know it is there. We all try to act like it's not. Just behave like we have a strict curfew and that nothing is really out there. Yet the people who are too bold or foolish and think that it's nothing, well, they don't last long. Those of us who are still here know that whatever that thing is, it's out there. Stalking, hunting. Looking for anything, an open window, a cracked door. Disappearances are frequent, especially for such a small town. The police have a whole song and dance for anyone who goes missing from the outside, but when it is a resident, well, it is more of a case where the families of the victims are reprimanded for not having known better. No one knows why the window of time is so mercifully brief. Almost just as suddenly as it starts, it's over. By 11:50 p.m., the streets are quiet again, and the town feels normal. But it's not normal. It never was. People here have learned to live with it. They lock their doors, shut their windows, and pretend it's not happening. I asked my parents why we don't just move and they never gave me a good answer. All they said was, it wouldn't do any good. We have to endure. It has to be here. It is safer for everyone if it's here. It did not make sense. I know people can get attached to places, but it felt crazy to me. I couldn't just pretend this was normal, not after what I saw. Not after what I felt. There was something out there, and it was worse than anyone would believe. It was just recently that I saw it again. It was a normal night, at least as normal as nights could be in my town. I was getting ready to go to bed, when I noticed that my cat Quincy was missing. I looked everywhere but I couldn't find him. Then I heard something and looked through the window to spot a familiar shape and my heart sank. He was outside. He must have gotten out when I had come home earlier and was sauntering along the sidewalk, clueless to the impending danger. The time was 11:36 p.m. I had no idea if the creature did anything to animals, but I did not want to find out. I had never let Quincy outside before and he did not come back to my shouted calls for his return. I had to do something dangerous and stupid to save him. I rushed outside, sprinting toward him and trying to grab him and bring him in before it was too late. I managed to reach him and pick him up. But then I froze when I sensed a presence as I was scrambling back to my door. Quincy's ears folded back and he hissed. I felt paralyzed and then I thought I saw it again. It was different this time. Larger and more overwhelming than before. Its presence seemed to fill the entire street, pressing against the houses like an unseen force. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was frozen in place, my breath caught in my throat. To my horror, it seemed to finally regard me. Quincy jumped out of my hands and ran back to my house. He had fortunately evaded whatever interest the thing might have had with him. The creature's head twisted unnaturally in my direction, its distorted features coalescing into more recognizable shapes. Staring into the grotesque visage forced a scream out of me as I beheld the blasphemous impossibility. I turned and sprinted away, screaming like a maniac. My heart was hammering against my ribcage with such force that each beat felt like it might crack my chest open. The sound of its pursuit echoed behind me, a wet slapping noise like a monstrous jellyfish gliding across the ground. Its deafening roar filled the air, shaking the ground beneath my feet as I ran for my life. I did not know if I could get away. No one I knew had been outside and survived. I ducked into an alley, my hands shaking as I pressed myself against the wall. My breath came in short, sharp gasps, and I could feel sweat dripping down my face. I didn't dare look around the corner. I didn't dare move. And then I heard the harrowing screams. They sliced through the air, piercing and full of terror. My heart raced as I strained to see who was making them, but all I could make out were shadowy figures caught in the open. The screams were short, sharp, and then they were swallowed by the night. The deafening silence that followed only added to the fear weighing down on me. I stayed pressed against the wall, trying to make myself as small and invisible as possible. The darkness seemed to come alive with every creak and rustle, amplifying my fear. I held my breath until I heard the sound of the creature moving away. And then, just like that, it was gone. But the eerie stillness lingered, haunting me even after the clock struck 11:50 p.m. The streets were once again quiet, but my nerves were still on edge. I stumbled back to my house, every step feeling like a race against time. Quincy waited anxiously at the door and bolted inside with me, seeking shelter inside. The horrible night had left me shaken, but grateful to be alive. Whatever that thing is, it does not belong in this world. It is not of this time or place, and its presence is so unsettling, it makes your mind ache just to catch a glimpse of it. No one can tell of its origins, maybe they are lost in the depths of history. But whatever its history, it remains. Always there, lurking in the shadows every night without fail. At that point, I did the one thing you probably think everyone should have done by now. I left my hometown. I moved to the largest city I could reach to get away from it all. My parents did not approve. In fact, they tried to tell me I could not go. I was so desperate to get out of there that I had to sneak away in the early morning, when they could not interfere. I never understood why we all stayed there and tried to ignore the eldritch nightmare that hunted us at night. It seemed so simple and I felt better at first. The city felt alive with the hum of traffic and the distant chatter of people during the day, a cacophony that made me feel safe, anonymous. Indeed, I thought I'd left the nightmare behind, that the creature was just a memory, a relic of a past I could bury. My new apartment is a cozy studio on the 5th floor, with a view of the bustling streets below. High enough where looking out the window does not fill me with dread at night. Unfortunately, something happened last night that has shattered the fragile illusion of my peaceful transition. On the first night in my new place, I sat on the edge of my bed, flipping through a magazine to distract myself from the creeping unease that had settled in the pit of my stomach. The clock on the nightstand read 11:28 p.m. I told myself I was being paranoid, that the creature was gone, that I was safe now. But the weight of the past lingered, a shadow in the corner of my mind that I couldn't shake. By 11:38 p.m., the city outside my window was eerily quiet. The usual sounds of traffic and distant music had faded, replaced by an unsettling stillness. I tried to focus on the magazine, but my eyes kept drifting toward the window, the darkness beyond the glass pressing in on me. And then I heard it, a soft, tentative tap against the pane. My heart skipped a beat. I froze, the magazine slipping from my fingers and falling to the floor. The sound was light, almost imperceptible, but it sent a chill coursing through my veins. I told myself it was nothing, I was just being paranoid. But then it came again, another tap, this time more insistent. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My eyes were fixed on the window, the darkness beyond it seeming to pulse with a life of its own. The tapping stopped, and for a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, a faint scratching sound, like claws on glass. My heart sank. I knew that sound, I knew what it meant. Slowly, with my legs trembling beneath me, I rose from the bed and approached the window. My hand reached for the curtain, hesitated, and then, with a deep, shaky breath, I pulled it back. What I saw made me freeze in terror. The creature was perched on the fire escape outside my window, its twisted form silhouetted against the moonlit sky. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its presence seemed to fill the room, pressing in on me with an unspeakable horror. I tried to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. The creature's head tilted to the side, its gaze locked on mine, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. It was here. It had followed me. And then, as if in slow motion, its mouth opened, revealing rows of jagged teeth, and it let out a low, guttural growl. The sound shattered the paralysis that held me in place. I stumbled back, my voice finally breaking free in a raw, terrified scream. The creature's form seemed to blur and shift, its presence filling the room with an unspeakable darkness. And then, everything went black. I regained consciousness, and I know it is not over. There is no escape from this thing that has followed me. I consider what my parents had said when I asked them why we never moved. Then, with dawning horror, I realized the truth of their words. It is safer for everyone if it's here. They did not mean it was safer for us. They meant it was safer for everyone else. They knew the danger. They stayed to keep it there. Now in my ignorance, I have made a huge mistake. Somehow it knew I left. It has followed me here, to a place where over 1 million people will soon know about its existence and maybe more if it moves beyond that. I am so sorry for bringing it here, I didn't know. Please, for your own safety, stay inside between 11:38 p.m. and 11:50 p.m. By now, it might not be safe wherever you are as well.